What's up everyone? Alex here. Pivoting is a term used to describe how creators and companies find ways to grow or expand in meaningful ways. From turning a computer company into a trillion-dollar consumer electronics business in Apple, to adopting console hardware to play on both TVs and portable in the Switch, there can be no denying that pivoting smartly can lead to great fortune. With Valkyrie Elysium, Square Enix is hoping that the series' pivot to a solo action RPG won't feel as drastic, especially when compared to the previous games before it. But as with any such pivot, inquiring minds and fans would like to know, were they successful in bringing life to a seemingly long-forgotten franchise? Valkyrie Elysium is developed by Soleil, with Square Enix overseeing the production. The footage that you're seeing right now is from the PS5 version of the game, and I'd like to thank Square Enix for providing this game code. I think the best way to describe Valkyrie Elysium is that it's a blend of character action games with the intention of making its combat more approachable than said genre. Oftentimes, the biggest problem with character action games is the high skill that's required to execute certain combos, in addition to the requirement that forces you to memorize a bunch of different combo strings. And keep in mind, I'm not making a judgment call here, that is just pretty much what the genre is all about, and some developers and publishers do see this as a detriment. So instead, Valkyrie Elysium employs a combo system that's similar to other action games, where you press the light attack a set number of times, then press a heavy attack to end the combo, unleashing a combo ender. Unlike most action games, however, the Valkyrie feels like she's got some weight, especially with how she swings her swords. This weight is reflected by the animation lock that all of her attacks experience, meaning you're committed to the attack animation until it's fully played out. This also means that mashing buttons like block or dodge while these animations are playing won't cancel said attacks, which means you'll also have to be deliberate when you press said attack buttons. What this also means is that a slower, deliberate pace in combat is required to get through the game's many encounters, though I found that the normal difficulty to be quite easy. That said, you can cancel your attack animations by casting spells or summoning Enheriars. Every enemy in Valkyrie Elysium has a certain weapon or elemental weakness, and I love that, at least for the elemental weaknesses, that they're displayed conveniently on bars sitting on top of enemies' heads. The left side of these bars function like a break meter, and once you've hit an enemy with their weakness enough times, they'll be stunned. The right side represents their health. Between casting spells and summoning allies, the latter, summoning of the Enheriars, is what I find fascinating. Instead of having a party that you can control like in Valkyrie Profile, you can summon Enheriars to fight alongside you. Each Enheriar also represents an element, and switching between Enheriars will apply these elements to your attacks. Naturally, they'll leave after depleting a soul meter, but I find this implementation interesting because it does feel to me that these AI helpers do a good job of acting as distraction for other enemies on the field. And best of all, not having to worry about babysitting them or healing them is a big boon to me. That said, I do miss the feeling of having party members, but I'll get into that later. Apart from the requisite dodge and guard buttons, one of my favorite skills has to be the ability to grab enemies from afar and pull yourself towards them, making it easy for you to continue a long combo string. Defeating enemies will leave crystals, which you can collect and use to upgrade weapons and different aspects of your Valkyrie. The sound that's being played whenever you collect these crystals is supposed to give you a satisfying feeling similar to that of collecting rings in Sonic games or even coins in Mario, but I find that the sound effect is a bit too tinny and can sound unpleasant over time. Attack variety is tied to each individual weapon, and unfortunately, you're unable to switch weapons in the middle of a combo, and again, this reinforces the rigidity of the game's combat. Upgrading weapons will unlock new combos, though the button presses are typically the same regardless of the type of weapon, which again makes it easy for players to just jump into the action without having to remember yet another set of combo strings. All in all, while I found the combat in Valkyrie Elysium to be fun for the first few hours, I began wishing for a bit more depth to it. It's during these moments that I found myself asking if Valkyrie Elysium would have benefited more if it went all in on the concept of being a character action game, and whether or not it would have succeeded. It's already counting combos and giving me a rating at the end of every mission, so it's already taken steps in that direction, but not fully. But as it stands, the slow trickle of new weapons, coupled with revisiting the same locales and fighting similar enemies goes, all of these elements do little to add variety to the gameplay experience. An aspect of the original Valkyrie games that I loved was its storytelling and character development. By comparison, Elysium's storytelling is a bit too straightforward and lighter when compared to its predecessors. To the developer's credit, the story never gets in the way of the forward momentum required of action RPGs to get players back into the action quickly. But this constant forward momentum doesn't allow dramatic moments between its characters to breathe, robbing them of their importance and insight into their motivations. The moments that I'm talking about are the parts of the game where we learn more about the Einherjars that join our journey, each with their own sorrowful tale that keeps with the tragic backstories of the series' many memorable characters. Accompanying these scenes is voice acting that feels a bit understated, with lip syncing feeling a bit off in certain sequences. This is particularly obvious whenever we speak to Odin the Allfather. He doesn't move a lot already, and it's because of this that every small detail that comes from his animation becomes immediately noticeable, especially when it's off. In general, I did find that the storytelling of Elysium to be a bit difficult to get into, and one that you can sum up in one sentence. Valkyrie Elysium does have multiple endings, but you'll find that a single playthrough will be done around 15 hours or so, with completionists finishing about 20. With the combat being what it is and the story being light, it's a shame that these overshadow what is, in my opinion, a beautiful game. It might be repetitive to go through each location, but I can't deny that every time I stepped foot in a new area, I felt as though the world opened up in some small way. From a UI aesthetics perspective, I think the artwork properly reflects the feel and lineage of the Valkyrie series. I don't normally try to point these out, but there was a certain amount of care that went into the creation of these, often trivial-sounding elements of games. Setting that aside, I actually can't get over the fact that Valkyrie Naruto runs. Is this somehow the future of Valkyries everywhere? Joking aside, I think I understand why the devs chose this type of animation, as it does convey this idea of moving really fast. Taking the game's art direction separate from its story and gameplay, I think Soleil did a really good job of conveying the mood and feel of the world well, and should be commended for their efforts. Accompanying Valkyrie Elysium's action and exploration is a wonderful soundtrack that evokes the spirit of the series. This might seem extremely controversial, but I am generally not a fan of Motoi Sakuraba's more recent work. But his compositions in Elysium manages to connect the present with the past of the series, evoking the successes of the previous games through its magical and mystical sounding tracks. Not bad for a game about the end of the world. At the end of the day, I really find it challenging to fully recommend Valkyrie Elysium. With the series' reputation over the years of being one of the most super expensive games on eBay, Elysium just simply doesn't meet the expectation of those rare games, and the decision to make this pivot is both too great and not enough at the same time to justify an immediate purchase. Had Elysium embraced character action fully and taken better care of its storytelling, then perhaps it could have had a chance of persuading longtime fans that this move was worth it. But as it stands, Elysium just lacks many of the elements that made us love the Valkyrie Profile series, and it's sadly a pivot that's a bit off the mark.